we're never about catching people being bad,
Okay.
but instead helping them be accountable to themselves and to their treatment. So one thing I think that's underappreciated by the general public sometimes is that she's really paying her debt to society,
Yeah.
right? She's taken responsibility for the criminal conduct, paying all the fines and fees that are assessed, and getting better.
Hi, I'm Monica Caffaratti. I'm a local attorney here in Reno, Nevada, Washoe County with Caffaratti and Garcia. Today we're going to be speaking with Judge Walker and Jaymie Mitchell about mental health court. Thank you both for joining us and educating the public.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with you, Judge Walker. Why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background so they can get to know you a little bit.
Sure. I have the privilege of serving in Department 7 of the 2nd Judicial District Court. There are 16 departments in the 2nd. I was a family division judge for several years in Department 2 and came to Department 7. I am responsible for adult criminal cases, for unlimited civil jurisdiction, and then I have the privilege of working across 3 different specialty courts right now, and mental health court is one of those.
Okay. What are the other two?
Veterans Court and Competency Court.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, that will be for another show. I'm talking about mental health today. Jaymie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and just give the audience a little bit of your background?
I grew up in Nevada. I was born and raised here. I went to UNR, and then I ended up going to McGeorge, and then I opened my own law practice after I graduated from college. And I had been operating in a law firm, Jaymie Mitchell, Attorney Law PC, for 20 years.
Great.
Until recently.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you. So we'll start with you, Judge Walker. You stated that you are a judge in general jurisdiction and you do criminal and civil cases. How long have you been a judge?
I've been a judge since 2011. I was actually a court master for 2 years before that, but I've been a district judge since 2011.
Okay, great. How did you get involved with mental health court?
I've had the privilege of being involved in multiple specialty courts over the years. So when I was in the family division, I was responsible for family mental health court and family drug court, for juvenile drug court. Since I've come to the general jurisdiction, I've had the privilege of being responsible for veterans court, for competency court, and now mental health court. And I requested the assignment to mental health court most recently, both out of interest and with its natural fit for together with competency court.
Okay, great. How does mental health court fit in with your regular caseload?
It is if you will, an extra duty. There are currently 70 participants in mental health court, which is a little low from the average in the years past, but it's kind of an extra duty. It's typically court conducted once a week together with a staffing.
Okay. And just to give the audience a little background, what exactly is mental health court and what is the procedure, how someone would get into mental health court?
So mental health court is a creature of statute, was created in 2001 by the legislature, and it is a multi-jurisdictional court, meaning if you have pled guilty, been found guilty, or pled no contest to a misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, or felony, those cases from multiple jurisdictions, not just within Washoe County, can be transferred with the agreement of the originating court and the receiving court to mental health court here. Mental health court requires that you have a serious mental health diagnosis and that you have a qualifying plea to a criminal allegation. If you meet those 2 criteria, we staff an application and decide whether or not to meet the needs of people who make those applications.
Okay, and do people, do they ask to go to mental health court or are they referred?
It is an application process. You know, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for almost all the specialty courts and mental health court in particular is that people's charges can be dismissed. And those include even serious felony allegations. And it's really a good incentive. And as I say, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow for people who make, you know, I always say that when people come to specialty courts, all they have to do is change everything.
Right.
And if people succeed in that change of everything in their lives, the reward for that change is a dismissal of their charges often.
What is the success rate of mental health court?
85%. So the last 3-year look-back window, 85% of the people who graduated have not had another criminal allegation in 3 years. That's almost 3 times the national average for people who receive no treatment or no intervention and enter the criminal justice system. So that's a remarkable, and that's consistent with specialty courts across the nation and other specialty courts in this district.
Okay. What does it entail? So you had mentioned a little bit about treatment. Is that the only requirement? Are there other?
So Ms. Mitchell will give you some first-person insights into the hamster wheel, I call it, that is treatment. But
Okay.
it is an application process. You begin, it's a 4-phase process. You begin a very intensive phase that requires at least 3 therapeutic meetings a week if you're not in
wow.
an inpatient setting.
Okay.
Multiple drug tests every week.
Okay.
If your originating judge is required that you attend NA or AA, you're often attending NA or NA on top of 3
Wow.
therapeutic meetings a week. It requires that people undertake any mental health treatment sessions and be compliant with those mental health treatment sessions. And then, of course, random drug testing to make sure that people are not using drugs of abuse or whatever their drug of abuse may be.
If you're comfortable, would you like to share what led you to the criminal charges in mental health court? Whatever you're comfortable with.
I had a mental illness that I was suffering with for many, many years that I was unaware that I had. I knew I had a mood disorder, but I didn't know that I had full-blown bipolar. And I ended up running out of some medication that I was taking for the mood disorder, and it sent me into a manic episode. I was having audio and visual hallucinations. I basically just lost my mind, and I didn't know what was happening because I'd never experienced anything like that in my life, And it just kept going on and on. Manic episodes can last weeks,
Wow.
And I got myself obviously into criminal trouble, which I'm very ashamed of. But I'm trying to move past it. I ended up hitting a vehicle, and I had to, make things right with him because, of course, it wasn't his fault. He had nothing to do with it. I feel blessed by God, honestly, that I didn't harm somebody else very badly or myself during that whole thing. And then I ended up having to face, criminal charges, and I came to learn that I had bipolar disorder with addiction. I had addiction issues along with that were probably caused by the bipolar disorder. But through, the mental health court, I've learned what bipolar is, and I'm learning how to deal with it. I've also learned how to deal with addiction issues. I've gone through the 12-step program. I am now taking on my own sponsees. I want to really take this situation and what's happened to me and my platform that I have here today and give back to the public.
Yeah.
I can help other people that are bipolar, that are struggling, that are not understanding what their disease is all about. I can be a shoulder to lean on, also with addiction.
Yeah.
I can help people who are trying to get over addiction. Really the main thing people need to understand is that both of these are diseases. Bipolar is a disease and addiction is a disease as well. And as long as you know what you're dealing with, then you can come back and try to conquer it. And that's what I want to help people do.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, and being an attorney in the community, I think that you're a great example for, we all have struggles, and you've gone through this and you've graduated and you're here to
Absolutely.
share your story. So
Yeah.
thank you for being here, and I
Thank
think
you.
you should really congratulate yourself. I congratulate you.
Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate
Of
that.
course. Do you ever see people kind of relapse along the way, and what effect does that have? Is the program done and they have to go back to face their criminal charges, or is there, the ability to kind of get back on track?
What I think is the great thing about all specialty courts, mental health court being one of them, is that at the end of the day, we're about a healthier, safer community, right? And meeting people's criminogenic risks and needs. If they have a serious mental illness, if they have substance abuse disorder, addressing that mental illness or the substance abuse disorder makes it much less likely that they'll recidivate in the future. We know that relapse is a natural part or a common or almost an expected part of recovery. Right. And so a relapse in and of itself doesn't mean you're out of the program. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you'll suffer a sanction. I always want to react therapeutically. So we as a team discuss if a person misses a drug test or if a person pops positive for a drug of abuse, what is the tool that they need or the lesson they need to learn, or what is the right intervention so that they don't relapse again? Now that can include jail. And if a person continues to use and misuse and relapse and not address that relapse, yes, people can be removed. But removal for me is almost like a personal failure as the judge. I would much rather, I always tell participants, look, if you're honest with me and you're honest with the person in the mirror, I'll work with you. Even if you have missteps, even if you have bumps along the road, I expect you to work through those, and I'll work through them with you.
That's great. And I'm sure you've had good reception to that.
Yeah, human beings want positive feedback and they want to feel better. And human beings are motivated by positive reinforcement. They're not motivated by negative reinforcement. One of the difficulties in our criminal justice system in general is it's very punitive. And don't get me wrong, if you commit a very serious felony or a very violent offense, you may represent a danger to the community and you may need some specific deterrence, but most people in general are not all bad.
Right.
And the issue is really to help understand what's causing their criminal behavior and what, again, are their criminogenic risks and needs, and how can we reduce those risks and needs by helping them with treatment, helping them with behavioral interventions, so they don't create the next victim.
Sure.
I always say this is smart justice, right?
Yeah.
It's about helping people get better, preventing the next victim, and ultimately a healthier and safer community.
That's great. That's wonderful. Do you approach mental health differently than you do your regular courtroom with criminal and civil cases? Or is it kind of, you're a judge and you're impartial, so that part is the same, but the approach?
Well, I have to laugh at myself, Ms. Caffaratti, because as a judge, I think I'm a big teddy bear, right? And I assure you that particularly on days when it's kind of the traditional criminal track and a serious sentencing, I'm sure they say Judge Walker's a tough guy, right?
Right.
In the therapeutic courts, my role is much different. My role is much more to meet people where they're at the level of their needs, in human terms. And so I often refer to participants, particularly, for example, when I was in Veterans Court, I view the veterans as my brothers and sisters. I'm a veteran. Yeah. They are veterans. We are brothers and sisters in service. And so I would use informal terms, even as a judge, kind of on the bench, as it were, in a way to connect with them in human terms and demonstrate to them that I'm on their side.
Right.
My goal is for them to graduate and succeed.
That's great.
And so that is kind of a non-traditional role, if you will, for a judge.
And I was thinking, you said that there was an 85% success rate, which is higher than the national average. And I was going to ask you what you attribute to that. Is that part of it? Is that the way that you...
Well, I invite you to talk to Ms. Mitchell about this, because she'll give you a lived experience. But really, there's a magical team. Yeah. In my view, the judge is probably the least important person in that room. Okay. Certainly much less important than the participants. But there's a magical team. In mental health court, there's a huge team of professionals whose role and goal is to support the participant toward graduation. Yeah. That's the secret sauce. Okay. I think Ms. Mitchell will probably confirm for you, once you figure out that the team actually gives a you-know-what, I think that matters more than anything else.
Great. Well, let's turn to Ms. Mitchell. So you recently graduated from mental health court last week.
I did.
Congratulations.
Yes,
that is a big deal, and you should be proud of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your experience with mental health court, how long it took you to get through it, and what it's like to graduate from the program.
Okay, well, mental health court actually took me 2 years because I had 2 separate felonies in 2 separate counties, and I was sentenced by 2 separate judges to mental health court. So, and the Washoe County case took quite some time to get through the system. So by the time it caught up, I was in there for 2 years, which is okay. The mental health court I thought was wonderful. I thought they had great professionals lined up to help you. I had a psychiatrist who was very helpful. He switched my medication right away. Okay. He realized that he thought, it was his understanding and belief that my medication was not helping me that I was on before. So I'm bipolar, so I got on your traditional lithium. Okay. And I've been taking that ever since. And I also got hooked up with a mental health counselor that I would see every other week. His name is Bill. He was wonderful. And there was also small group therapy that we would do. And in the beginning, they make you do it a little more, and then they kind of step back on that later on as you're through the program. But in the beginning, I was going twice a week to group therapy, which ultimately I ended up loving. I love the people that were in my group therapy. It was very helpful to talk about some of the, problems that were going on with your peers that have those problems. Yeah. And these problems can touch anyone in any walk of life, whether you're a lawyer like me, or you're working at Macy's or a grocery store, or you're a judge or wherever, Absolutely. And that's one thing that was hard for me to accept in the beginning. I don't know if I'm getting off track here, but it was hard for me to understand that I was bipolar and that I had a mental health issue. But once I did accept that and understand that, I learned how to take care of myself, because it is serious. And the main thing is to take your medication. That's one of the most important things, is to take that medication. That's, I was on a medication before that for a mood stabilizer that made me go into a manic episode. Because I stopped taking it abruptly. And that's kind of what started all my problems to begin with, is I wasn't taking a medication properly. And that's another thing that people with mental health issues should know.
So when you say providers, the court has the providers available and you're assigned to them, like your psychiatrist?
Yes, exactly. I was assigned to a psychiatrist, and I was assigned a counselor. I actually got to pick my counselor.
Oh, nice.
But he's one of the people that did the small group therapies, and I really enjoyed him. So I picked him as a therapist, and he's been great. He's been very helpful. And then we have to drug test 3 days a week, so the program keeps you accountable. For any kind of, you can't use alcohol, no marijuana. You can't use obviously illegal drugs. But it's very strict. It's hard to make it through the program. You really have to want to make it through.
But you did.
And to graduate, Miss Mitchell has to pay all of the supervision fees to PNP.
All the fees.
Okay.
All of the court fees that are assessed at the beginning of the case, and all the restitution.
Okay.
So one thing I think that's underappreciated by the general public sometimes is that she's really paying her debt to society, right? She's taken responsibility for the criminal conduct, paying all the fines and fees that are assessed, and getting better.
Yeah.
That's a win-win all the way around.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So yes, I had to do all that too, and I did successfully. And it was hard because I haven't been working as much as I used to. I had to really scrape that money together, but I did, and I got it done.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
wonderful.
Thank you.
So can you you said you went to therapy twice a week. Can you just walk us through a typical week because as Judge Walker was saying, it can be quite extensive.
So the first thing you're going to do when you're on mental health is call a number and find out if you have to drug test for that day. And that's what I would do.
Do you do that every day?
I would do that every morning because you want to avoid diluted tests too. And I had a couple of those just because I was drinking too much coffee. But if you go down to the facility right when you wake up, after before you go to the bathroom in the morning, that's the best way to do it. So that's what I would do. And then I had my group therapy that I would attend at like 1 o'clock on Monday or whatever. And that would be an hour long. And then I would, have group or regular therapy that week as well. So, and then another group therapy session. But all of it involved was around that drug test.
Don't want to miss that.
No, I don't want to miss it. I used to have nightmares that I missed it.
Well.
But, it kept you accountable. And it's, a lot of people have slip-ups on those drug tests.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a difficult program. You got to really want it, like I said.
Yeah, absolutely. So the court provides the providers for you, as we just discussed. Was it hard to schedule? Because I'm sure the audience probably has that as a question. It's hard enough when you're dealing with mental health issues and maybe addiction, but then, and some people, depending on, them personally, may get frustrated. So how easy was it to get started and to complete that?
Started on what exactly?
So you're given, you have to go to the psychiatrist, you have to go to counseling.
I just started it up right away. I just started making appointments and getting it rolling. Yeah, I wanted to get it done, do it right. So you just start. It does put that in your lap to do that. There's a coordinator, her name's Alyssa down in NAMS, and she can help you with that too. Some people aren't as high functioning in the program as I am.
That's a great word. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, high functioning. Yeah. So they have people to assist you with that. If you're struggling, all you got to do is reach out and ask.
Oh, great.
And Alyssa helped me out with a lot of my own things that I had. Like I needed copies of things for court and things like that. She's always really willing to get that stuff done.
That's nice because I know even little things like that can get people off track and have a big impact. So
particularly people that begin with a mental health challenge, right? I always say all you have to change is everything.
Right.
And that is no joke.
Right.
And for some people, it's learning patterns of organization. Miss Mitchell's, very intelligent, very capable professional, and so had many of those patterns in place. But some of the clients need to learn how to build a calendar, how to schedule each day. And actually, there's much of therapeutic benefit in that.
Yeah.
Having a regular sleep-rest pattern, having regular accountability to when you eat, when you drink, when you take your medications.
Yeah.
All of those are pattern changes that help people build a healthier life. But it is very challenging.
Yeah.
And many people report struggling and being nervous about it and scared about it. And that's why I say I think the team really does a good job of approaching it from a positive, supportive point of view. were never about catching people being bad,
Okay.
but instead helping them be accountable to themselves and to their treatment in a way that lifts them up as opposed to beating them down.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Have you ever had a case that just really stood out to you that was exceptional or for any reason that you'd like to share with the public?
Well, let's make Miss Mitchell uncomfortable. So I embarrassed her during graduation, and I would in this way. I met Miss Mitchell almost 20 full years ago
Okay.
in the gym, among other places. But she was a young undergrad, kind of interested in the legal system while I was working in the DA's office. And she volunteered to do research for me in a very serious murder case.
Wow. Very
A triple homicide, in fact, where a mother had allegedly and then was found guilty in 2 counts of killing her infant children before they turned 1 year of age.
Wow.
Miss Mitchell found the key evidence that I used through search at Medline up at the medical school
Wow.
to understand what was going on in this case and to sort of pick apart the pathology that was going on.
Yeah.
And so when I fast forward many years later, Jaymie graduated from law school. I've had the privilege of representing a member of her family when I was in private practice. I've known her, for a long time, been friendly with her. When I saw that she was arrested, my first reaction was, what a tragedy that was. For the person that was victimized, which Jaymie will tell you herself, and then for her as well, right? There's nothing positive about criminal acts when they happen in the community. I always say it's a lose-lose all the way around. But I was worried for her, and I was worried about how she was going to do and how she was going to recover. So I applied to take over mental health court. I didn't realize that Miss Mitchell was in it, and I got to actually matriculate her graduation, having done none of the work. But as I told her at graduation, sort of food for my soul as a human being and a judge, right? To see people pull themselves up by the bootstraps when challenged so profoundly. I know how smart she is, right? I know how capable she is. I worried that she might forget those things in the process of this, criminal involvement. Fortunately, she didn't lose sight of that, and here she is. And my hope is that she'll, regain her license and go back into the community. That's a magnificent story.
Yeah.
Again, because I would point out the victims get made whole in the process, right? There was no small amount of restitution that had to be paid in her case. That gets paid, and it gets paid much, much more regularly than it does in the traditional criminal path. A very small percentage of the restitution I impose in most criminal cases ever gets paid.
Interesting.
In specialty courts, you can't graduate unless the restitution is paid.
Okay. And it kind of goes along with that accountability too.
So I would use hers as a great story, right?
Thank you.
What was your favorite? I don't know if there's a favorite thing, but what did you find most helpful maybe for mental court? And maybe also
probably
most
the
difficult?
The counseling they provided was top notch. The medical staff, the psychiatrists they provided were awesome. They would really zero in on what was going on with me and help me. And like I said, all of it was really, it's a hard experience, but it was a really good experience. I met some wonderful people in all walks of life that were struggling just like me. And it's so nice to know somebody else out there feels your pain, and that they understand what you're going through. And that is really helpful. The hardest part was those drug tests. I did not like those drug tests.
What time did you have to call in the morning? Was it super early?
I would call it at midnight the night before because I wanted to plan my day around those stupid drug tests. And I have a really hard time going to the bathroom in front of other people. Right. So sometimes I'd have to go back in that room 8 times, 1, 2, because I could not go to the bathroom. Yeah. So I had to account for that in my timeline. So I'm just really glad to be done with that.
Well, you did.
But I understand the accountability. You can't work the program well if someone's on drugs. It's just not going to work. So they have to monitor that. It's just a necessary evil of the program, It's just what happens.
What advice would you give to someone who is either starting mental health court or this may be an option for them? If you could give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
I would tell them to take it if they had it as an option. It's a gift. Mental health court is a gift. Veterans court is a gift. I mean, you can't get a deal like that. So I would tell that person to do that program and do it however they could and get through it. Okay. And just, because you have your record sealed after that, It's like you can put everything, some people, not all, but a lot of people do.
But it's an option for some. That's great.
And that's an absolute gift that I can't get that anymore. You can't buy that. Yeah. Right? I guess you can seal your case later on, but you have to wait years to do it, So yeah,
Well, that's a good reward to look forward to at the end.
yeah, I'd say get through it. There's probably going to be a lot of grumbling in the beginning because there is a lot to it.
Yeah.
You know, going to take those drug tests, all that, but the end result, I think, is totally and completely worth it. So I'm so glad I did it.
Yeah. Oh, what are your plans now that you've graduated?
So what my plans are is I plan to get back to work. I'm going to
All
go
right.
put in for the Nevada State Bar and let them know that I've been, doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm basically going to AA meetings every day of the week. It's good to stay in like that, though. It's good to stay in, and I'm trying to find sponsees as well. So I'm trying to find people that would like help. And so I think they want to see, that's what they want to see. They want to see sobriety. They want to see that I'm doing well, I'm stable, that I'm not, off my meds, which I'm not. I realize how important it is for someone with bipolar to take their medication. I mean, it's paramount. You got to do it.
Yeah.
It's just not an option. I know some people like to go off of it, but it's nothing good's going to come from that.
Right.
So anyway, my plans basically are to start working again, being a lawyer again, and taking on the clients that I know and love. I was a family law attorney for 20 years.
Yeah.
I want to get back to that. I want to start going back to court and fighting cases. So that's kind of what my goal is.
It's waiting there for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Judge Walker, have you ever had the experience of someone coming to mental health court that you think maybe doesn't really need to be there? Is it an option kind of for people to go there to try to maybe get out of their criminal case, or is that not how it works?
I apologize for the somewhat long answer. I think the best way for me to answer is to sort of chart my own journey. When the specialty courts in the second began in the district, I was in the DA's office.
Okay.
And I testified against them
Oh, wow.
because I thought it was going to be those criminals
Right.
getting off easy.
Right.
And I was exactly wrong, let me just say about that. And now, 25 to almost 30 years later, I would say I was wrong for a number of reasons. What's the end goal? The end goal is a healthier, safer community, right? Yes, there's, I guess, punishment to be had, retribution to be had, specific and general deterrence, all those general criminal principles. But at the end of the day, 99.9% of people who are convicted of a crime are getting out of jail or prison.
Yeah.
And they're coming back to the community. And the question is not if they're coming back, but how they're coming back.
Right.
Have we addressed their mental illness issues? Have we addressed their substance abuse issues? And if we haven't, we've actually made it more likely there will be another victim.
Yeah.
Which I'm strongly against, right? We're all strongly against
Right.
that. The specialty courts have a proven, profound nationwide track record of success. It works like nobody's business. And it works because people get better, they're held to account, and they address their criminogenic risks and needs. And so I never view specialty court as a way out of criminal responsibility. In fact, I would argue it's harder. I think Miss Mitchell would tell you it'd probably be easier in one sense to have just done her time, right? Just take the plea, go to prison or jail or whatever it was going to be, and just do your time. That's easier than all the hard internal work to go into the very deep psychotherapy and counseling necessary to understand what are my illness, what are my triggers, and how do I solve those?
Right.
So I actually think the specialty courts are the harder track in a lot of ways. But what I especially like about them and for the criminal justice system is it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
That's amazing. And like Ms. Mitchell was saying, you have to want it. So if someone's trying to go through it, they don't really want it and it wouldn't be effective. Thank you. And I did have one more question. You stated earlier that there's about 70 participants right now. Do you think that the court should be expanded, or do you think it's enough resources and there should be more people pulled in, or how do you view that?
Things ebb and flow. The mental health court has had as many as 100 participants on the track at a different time. And I would offer, I think the judges, if there's a criticism, we had not done the best job in the district of owning the specialty courts. You asked early on, where does it fit in your calendar? And it is an extra duty, as it were. I own it and I aspire to it, and we have a growing community, right? And if you talk to the American Psychiatric Association, the American Medical Association, the American Pediatric Association, we have a mental health crisis in the United States. I can assure you we have a mental health crisis in Washoe County. And so I think unequivocally we need to find more people to help because the numbers, I know the numbers in a population-based sense are there.
Is there anything you want to tell the public that you think that we haven't covered that you think is important for them to know?
Yeah, I think that if I want them to hear a judge say, please don't be too afraid of it. I am very cognizant of the fact that the theater of the courtroom is designed to make people nervous, right? Everybody has to stand when the judge enters. Everybody has to address the judge as your honor. Often the judges are meting out punishment or fines and fees. And I would invite people to be confident in the idea that we just want to help.
Yeah.
Judges are, at the end of the day, public servants. And as I've repeatedly said, my goal is a healthier, safer community. And I really don't care how we get there.
Yeah.
I just want a healthier, safer community. Less crime, fewer victims, and happier folks.
Right.
That's all any of us, I think, want. And so my message to anybody listening, if you're on the fence, is know that the judges, particularly the judges involved in specialty court, are a part of the team toward your success. I like nothing better than when people graduate.
Yeah.
People graduate at very high rates in the second in the courts we have, and I think rightly the court should be proud of that.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you would like to tell the public that you think they should know?
I just like the public to know that mental health court is a great thing that was created for our community, and that don't be afraid to ask for it, and it can help you with your mental health issues and substance abuse issues, and provide a lot of mental health care, therapy and things like that, psychiatrists, which normally it's hard to get a psychiatrist without insurance or even with insurance, and they provide that. So it's just I think it was a great creation for our community, and I hope that people, if they are in need of it, use it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Sure.
And thank you so much. Thank you, Judge Walker, for
Privilege.
sharing with us how the
you.
court operates. And thank you so much, Ms. Mitchell, for sharing your story. I know that you're going to help a lot of people out there.
I hope so.